Imagine being, like, universally recognized as the absolute best in the world at your job. I mean, unequivocally changing how an entire profession operates, forever altering the way human beings actually behave on screen.
Right. It is a massive legacy.
Yeah, but now imagine that you openly despise that very same job. Like, you refuse to memorize your lines, you treat the work with active contempt, and you once got paid $3.7 million to literally read off cue cards hidden off camera for just 2 weeks of work.
I mean, it is the ultimate contradiction. We are talking about a man who completely revolutionized an art form while simultaneously, thumbing his nose at it every single step of the way.
Exactly. So today we are doing a deep dive into the life of Marlon Brando. We've got a massive stack of biographical research here, and our goal isn't just to, list his movies like a table of contents.
Right. Nobody wants just a Wikipedia summary.
No, definitely not. We really want to figure out the human being behind the myth. We're going to trace the turning points, the immense controversies, and the undeniable, incredibly frustrating genius of a man who just refused to play by anyone's rules.
It is wild.
So whether you know him as the Godfather or, the guy in the leather jacket, or you just vaguely recognize the name, you are about to hear a story of incredible rebellion.
Okay, let's unpack this. Where does a contradiction like Brando even begin?
Well, it begins, as these things so often do, with a deeply troubled, incredibly unstable childhood. I mean, to understand why Brando acted the way he did.
And specifically how he changed acting itself, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
To understand that, you have to look at his profound abandonment issues. He was born in Nebraska, later moved to Illinois, and his father was a traveling salesman, so he was constantly gone and apparently known for being really highly critical and harsh.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And his mother was an actress, but she was also frequently absent, and she struggled with severe alcoholism. So it sounds like his entire foundation was just built on people leaving or letting him down.
Precisely. And because the people who were supposed to be there for him just simply weren't, young Brando became intensely attached to the family's housekeeper.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she basically became his surrogate mother and his only real source of stability. But then she left to get married.
Oh, man. That is brutal for a kid.
It really was. This wasn't just, a sad goodbye for him. It created this deep, lingering sense of abandonment and emotional insecurity that would haunt him and really define his choices for his entire life.
So how does a kid even cope with that?
Well, left to his own devices, he started acting out. He developed a massive reputation for pranks, failed almost every subject in high school, and was ultimately expelled in 1941.
Okay, so what was his family's solution? Like, if he's completely rejecting the public school system, where do you even send a kid like that?
Well, his father decided to send him to Shattuck Military Academy, hoping to, literally drill some discipline into him.
Which I'm guessing was a terrible idea.
Unsurprisingly, a total disaster for a kid with a pathological hatred of authority. He actually did excel at drama there, but by 1943, he was put on probation for being insubordinate to an officer.
Naturally.
Right, so he was confined to campus, but he sneaked out into town, got caught, and the faculty actually voted to expel him.
So they literally kicked him out.
Yeah, and he eventually just dropped out entirely. He even tried to enlist in the Army for World War II, but a football injury from the academy left him with a trick knee, so he was classified physically unfit for service.
Wait, so the military rejects him, high school rejects him, his family is essentially entirely fragmented. What does a guy with literally no prospects and a trick knee do in the 1940s?
He follows his sisters to New York City
Right.
and just completely stumbles into studying drama. He ends up taking classes under Stella Adler, who was teaching the Stanislavski system.
Say the Stanislavski system, that's what we often casually call method acting, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because we hear that term thrown around a lot today, usually when an actor stays in character for months and refuses to shower or something wild. But what did that system actually mean back then?
It was a complete paradigm shift. I mean, before this, if you look at movies or plays from the 30s and 40s, actors relied on a very artificial theatrical style.
Like that really fast, crisp way of talking.
Yes, the mid-Atlantic accent, that crisp, highly enunciated voice you hear in old black and white films. Acting was about projecting an outward representation of an emotion. Like, if you were sad, you put your hand to your forehead and sighed loudly.
Very melodramatic.
Exactly. The Stanislavski system, which Adler championed, taught the exact opposite. It demanded internal emotional truth. You don't pretend to be sad. You access your own real, deeply buried emotional memories.
Basically using your own traumas to fuel the character.
Yes, you let those real feelings fuel the reaction.
So it sounds like before Brando, acting was classical ballet,
Right.
like hitting exact marks, keeping perfect posture, projecting to the back of the room. But Brando comes in and turns it into a street fight. It was messy, improvisational, totally raw.
That is a perfect way to look at it. And Brando was just a natural. There's this incredible story from Adler's class that completely encapsulates his instinct for this new realism.
Oh, I love this story.
Right. So Adler tells the class to act like chickens, but then she adds a twist. She says a nuclear bomb is about to drop.
Okay, which is an impossible scenario. How do you even react to that?
Exactly. So most of the class immediately starts clucking wildly, flapping their arms, running around the room in a blind panic.
Doing the whole theatrical fear thing.
Right. But Brando, he just sits there, completely calm, and pretends to lay an egg.
Just laying an egg.
Yeah. And when Adler stops the class and asks him why on earth he reacted that way, he simply says, "I'm a chicken. What do I know about bombs?"
Wait, so he completely ignored the premise of the exercise because a literal chicken wouldn't understand a nuclear threat. That is hilarious.
It really is.
But it also, like, completely strips away the performance aspect. He wasn't trying to show the teacher how well he could act scared. He was just existing within the internal logic of the scenario.
And that was revolutionary. Before Brando, as he put it himself in a later documentary, actors were like breakfast cereals, entirely predictable. You know exactly what you're going to get in every box.
Right.
But Brando brought this unpredictable, entirely natural approach to the stage. He didn't recite lines, he hesitated, he mumbled, he searched for words the way real people actually do in conversation.
But wait, I have to push back here.
Okay, go for it.
If we look at his track record up to this point, getting expelled from military school, sneaking out, completely defying authority at every single turn, how did he submit to the rigid discipline of stage acting? I mean, you still have to learn lines, hit your marks, take orders from a director. That seems like a total mismatch for his personality.
That is a really great observation. But you kind of have to completely reframe what the stage meant to him. Stage wasn't a place of discipline for him. It was a sanctuary.
A sanctuary?
Yeah. When he moved to New York and got into these classes, it was literally the first place in his life he wasn't criticized. It was the first time he heard good things about himself.
Oh, wow.
His rebellious instincts, his mumbling, that intense internal emotional turbulence, those weren't punished by Stella Adler. They were actually rewarded as realism.
That makes so much sense. He found a place where his psychological damage was actually a professional asset. He could finally vent his trauma.
Exactly.
Although it is worth noting, he still absolutely hated people who tried to act like gurus or dictators over that trauma. Like, he had a famous hatred for Lee Strasberg, another really prominent acting teacher who later tried to take credit for teaching Brando how to act.
Oh yeah, Brando openly despised him.
Yeah, he publicly called Strasberg an ambitious, selfish man who never taught him a single thing, and he gave all the credit to Adler and the director Elia Kazan.
He had zero tolerance for anyone claiming authority over his talent, which is exactly why his transition from a student to a Broadway star was so famously chaotic.
Right. So if the stage was his sanctuary, how does he end up getting fired from a major Broadway play? And how does that firing actually launch his career?
Okay, so it happens in 1946. He's cast in a play called The Eagle Has Two Heads, starring Tallulah Bankhead.
Now, Bankhead was Broadway royalty, right?
Absolutely. She represented the old guard, that highly theatrical, classical style we just talked about, and she despised method acting.
Oh, so a perfect clash waiting to happen.
Exactly. Brando, true to form, instantly clashes with her and the producer. He mumbles through the rehearsals, completely refuses to project his voice.
That's driving her crazy.
Oh, and it gets worse. During the pre-Broadway tour, he tries everything to ruin the play for her. He's scratching his crotch on stage, picking his nose during her big monologues, just doing everything to pull focus and sabotage the production.
Which is just incredibly unprofessional.
Totally.
But they eventually fire him, right?
They did. And that firing was literally the greatest blessing of his professional life. Because he was fired, his schedule suddenly opened up, making him available to audition for the role of Stanley Kowalski in Tennessee, Williams's brand new play, A Streetcar Named Desire.
And the irony is, Tallulah Bankhead was the one who essentially recommended him for it.
Yes. She wrote a letter to the producers basically saying she knew a, quote, total pig of a man without sensitivity or grace, end quote, who would be absolutely perfect for the brutish role of Kowalski.
Talk about a backhanded compliment.
Seriously.
And Brando didn't just play Kowalski, he completely reinvented what a leading man looked like. I mean, the source text mentions he actually based his physical portrayal on a boxer he studied at a local gym named Rocky Graziano.
He did. He watched how Graziano moved, that heavy, grounded, almost animalistic slouch. And Graziano didn't even know who Brando was until a friend gave him tickets to see the play.
Oh man, imagine that realization.
Right. Graziano sat in the audience and suddenly realized that son of a bitch from the gym is playing me. Brando had just totally absorbed the man's entire physical essence.
So he takes this wildly successful stage performance, adapts it for the film version of Streetcar, and earns his first Oscar nomination. But how did he take that raw improvisational style and apply it to an original film role?
To see that, you really have to look at the 1954 film On the Waterfront. He played Terry Malloy, a conflicted, washed-up boxer working on the docks. And there is a very famous scene set in the back of a taxi where Terry's brother, played by Rod Steiger, pulls a gun on him.
Right, and if we look at how that scene was actually written on the page, the script called for Brando to act terrified. Like he was supposed to react at gunpoint, maybe yell or show intense fear. But Brando told the director, Elia Kazan, that it was completely unrealistic.
And why did he think it was unrealistic?
Because he didn't believe Terry would think his own brother would actually pull the trigger. They were blood. So instead of reacting with that cliche theatrical fear or anger, Brando improvised something totally unexpected.
What did he do?
When Steiger pulls the gun, Brando just gently, almost lovingly, reaches out and pushes the barrel of the gun away with this look of profound heartbreak.
Kazan later said it was the best performance by a man in the history of film. I mean, a lesser actor would have yelled, creating a typical dramatic conflict.
Yeah.
But Brando acted with a melancholy that suggested a terrific depth of pain.
Yeah, he pushed the gun away not because he was scared of the bullet, but because it broke his heart that his brother would even point it at him.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because of this incredibly raw, vulnerable, broken style of acting, Brando accidentally creates a massive youth culture revolution.
Oh, yes.
In 1953, right around the same era, he stars in The Wild One, playing Johnny Strabler, the leader of a motorcycle gang. He wears a leather jacket, a tilted cap, jeans, sideburns, and practically overnight, he sparks the rock and roll youth culture.
Sales of leather jackets and motorcycles literally skyrocket globally.
Yeah, he directly inspires James Dean. He inspires Elvis Presley. He becomes the ultimate symbol of the generation gap and teenage rebellion.
What's fascinating here is the massive irony of that symbol. Brando became the poster boy for counterculture swagger and looking cool, but he didn't do it to make some societal statement.
Right.
In his autobiography, he admitted he only acted to express the intense emotions and insecurities buried inside him from his childhood. He actually said, "I guess my emotional insecurity as a child, the frustrations of not being allowed to be who I was, may have helped me as an actor."
So the entire world saw this cool, untouchable rebel, but the reality was he was just a wounded kid trying to vent his trauma on screen.
Exactly.
But that intense realization that he's being idolized for simply venting his own deep-seated trauma, that starts to sour his relationship with the industry, doesn't it? I mean, if he's bleeding for the camera, they're just selling leather jackets, that explains exactly why he treated his later career like a hostile takeover.
It really does.
Yeah.
This leads directly into the 1960s, a period Brando himself openly referred to as his, quote, "fuck you years."
Wow, very subtle.
Very. He became highly disillusioned with Hollywood. He realized it was an industry just commodifying his pain, so he stopped caring. He viewed acting merely as a financial end, accepting roles way beneath his talent just for the paycheck.
And he got a reputation for being difficult.
Impossibly difficult.
Right.
Deliberately sabotaging major productions like the remake of Mutiny on the Bounty. By the end of the decade, the man who was once the greatest actor in the world was considered completely unbankable. Studios literally wouldn't touch him.
So how does a totally unbankable actor who openly hates the industry land the most iconic role of the 1970s? I'm talking about The Godfather in 1972.
Well, it was a brutal fight. Director Francis Ford Coppola was desperate to cast Brando as Vito Corleone, but the studio executives at Paramount were vehemently opposed. The president of the studio literally stated, "As long as I'm president of the studio, Marlon Brando will not be in this picture."
They just didn't want the headache.
Right. Coppola had to trick Brando into doing a, quote, makeup test, which was effectively a screen test, which is something highly insulting for an actor of his historical stature.
Yeah, asking Brando to audition.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he took a camera to Brando's house, and this is where Brando's genius really shines through the apathy. Brando famously stuffed cotton balls in his cheeks, to simulate the Don's puffed, bulldog-like face.
Oh, that's where that comes from.
Yeah, he darkened his hair with shoe polish and completely transformed his posture right there in his living room.
And when the studio executives saw the tape, they famously asked, "Who is this old guinea?" They didn't even recognize him.
Not at all.
But even though they relented, they still made him pay for his reputation, didn't they?
They signed him for an incredibly low fee of $50,000. He was given a percentage of the gross profits as well. But Brando was so strapped for cash at the time, he sold his percentage points back to the studio for an immediate $100,000.
Which ended up being an $11 million mistake when the film became a massive, record-breaking blockbuster.
Yeah, financially painful.
But financially strapped or not, artistically, it was a total triumph. He wins his second Best Actor Oscar for playing a mafia boss, not as a ruthless, yelling thug, but as a gentle, quiet, authoritative family man.
A total reinvention of the mobster trope.
Exactly. Yet when it came time to accept the ultimate Hollywood validation, he refused.
He didn't even show up to the 1973 Academy Awards. Instead, he sent a Native American actress and activist, Sacheen Littlefeather, to decline the award on his behalf.
Right.
She went to the podium and announced that Brando was rejecting the Oscar in protest of the treatment of Native Americans by the film industry and to bring international media attention to the ongoing standoff at Wounded Knee.
Which just completely shocked the world. But this wasn't an isolated incident for him, was it?
Not at all. If we connect this to the bigger picture, you see a man who constantly used his leverage to challenge established authority. I mean, he was deeply involved in civil rights activism throughout the 60s and 70s.
What kind of stuff was he doing?
He participated in the 1963 March on Washington. He contributed heavily to the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, marched with Martin Luther King Jr., and donated to the Black Panther Party. Whenever he had a platform, he weaponized his fame against systems he felt were oppressive.
That being said, his public statements weren't always universally embraced as progressive. The source text notes he caused significant controversy later in his life regarding comments he made about Jewish people in Hollywood.
Yes, the source material is very clear about these conflicting narratives. In interviews with Playboy in 1979 and later on Larry King Live in 1996, Brando made sweeping statements claiming Hollywood was run by Jewish people and that they had exploited other minorities on screen while protecting their own image.
And how did the public and his peers actually react to that?
It drew immediate and severe backlash. Larry King actually pointed out to him on air that his remarks played directly into anti-Semitic tropes. Brando tried to argue he was actually praising the Jewish community's success.
So it's a very complicated legacy.
It's a stark contrast in his life, yeah. The source material presents this tension where, on one hand, some of his close Jewish colleagues, like his agent Jay Cantor, publicly defended him, stating Brando was a staunch supporter of the Jewish people in Israel.
But on the other hand,
Brando's own autobiography contains deeply critical stances where he condemned Israel's actions toward Palestinians. It leaves us with a highly conflicting, very complex picture of his worldview.
which perfectly transitions into the immense complexities of his actual process on set during his later years. Because if we're talking about a man who weaponized his fame, let's look at how he treated the actual productions.
Let's do it.
So in 1979, he reunites with Coppola for Apocalypse Now. He is paid a staggering $1 million a week to play Colonel Kurtz. And how does he prepare? He shows up vastly overweight, admits he hasn't even bothered to read the source material, Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness.
Just completely unprepared.
Exactly. And proceeds to spend days just sitting in a trailer talking with Coppola, entirely improvising his dialogue while the production budget just bleeds out.
And yet, through all that chaos, his whispered final lines, the horror, are some of the most iconic in cinema history. He found the genius in the mud.
He really did.
But this chaotic, highly improvisational approach didn't always yield victimless art. We have to address the profound ethical controversy surrounding his 1972 film Last Tango in Paris.
Yes, this is a very dark chapter, and it goes right back to that idea of using trauma as a tool. Brando starred opposite a young 19-year-old actress named Maria Schneider. The film is notorious for a highly graphic, simulated rape scene where Brando's character uses butter as a lubricant.
According to the historical record, and admissions from both Brando and the director, Bernardo Bertolucci, Schneider was completely kept in the dark.
She didn't know about it.
She was not informed about the use of the butter until right before filming began. While the sexual act itself was simulated, the emotional violation was incredibly real. Schneider later stated she felt deeply humiliated and, in her words, quote, a little raped by both men.
That is just awful.
Bertolucci openly admitted he withheld the information from her because he wanted her to react with real, unsimulated frustration and rage.
It's horrific. He wanted her real trauma on screen the same way Adler wanted Brando's real trauma. Even Brando later admitted he felt deeply manipulated and violated by the emotional depths Bertolucci pushed him to the point where Brando refused to speak to the director for 15 years.
Wow.
But the fact remains, Brando was the one who came up with the idea for the scene, and he actively participated in withholding that crucial consent from his much younger co-star.
This raises an important question for you, the listener, to really grapple with. When we look at the legacy of so-called genius, how do we weigh the paradigm-shifting art they create against the chaos and sometimes actual trauma they inflict on the people around them?
Yeah.
Is the art worth the collateral human cost?
It's a really heavy question. And the chaos wasn't just on set either. His personal life was just as wild. I mean, he had at least 11 children with various wives, partners, and his own housekeeper. He was openly bisexual, once telling a journalist he found rumors about him and Jack Nicholson amusing. He fell in love with Tahiti while filming, bought a 12-island atoll, and literally tried to build an environmental utopia there.
He was incredibly eccentric and, honestly, isolated. He became an active ham radio operator.
Ham radio, seriously?
Yes. He would use the fake name Marlon Brando just to talk to strangers around the world, desperately seeking the normal conversations his fame had totally stolen from him.
That is surprisingly sad.
And, remarkably, he held actual patents from the U.S. Patent Office for a tensioning mechanism he invented for conga drums.
Conga drums. I mean, it's almost like a video game hacker who has completely broken the code of the game. By the end of his career, Brando realized exactly how little effort he could expend to extract the maximum amount of money from a Hollywood system he openly despised.
Yeah, he knew exactly what he was doing.
Remember that Superman role we talked about at the beginning? $3.7 million for 2 weeks of work. He refused to read the script. He literally read his lines off cue cards taped to the chests of the other actors. He beat the game, but he seemed entirely miserable doing it.
He really did. Later in life, he battled severe weight gain, topping 300 pounds. He suffered from type 2 diabetes and dealt with immense, highly publicized family tragedies involving his children. When he died in 2004 at the age of 80, he was a man really isolated by his own immense defenses, requiring an oxygen tank just to get around.
So what does this all mean? When we distill this massive, messy life, we're left with the ultimate American rebel. Brando rejected classical, rigid, dramatic training. He didn't want to perform an emotion. He wanted to be the emotion.
Exactly.
He utilized his own profound emotional damage, the childhood abandonment, the deep insecurity, to create a completely new, vulnerable, and deeply realistic style of performance. He changed the entire trajectory of 20th century acting.
Every single actor who came after him, James Dean, Jack Nicholson, Robert De Niro, Daniel Day-Lewis, they're all walking through the door that Marlon Brando kicked open. He proved that acting didn't have to be a polite recitation of words. It could be raw, unpredictable, messy human behavior.
But I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, something to explore on your own. If Brando's revolutionary art was born directly from his profound emotional insecurity, his deep-seated trauma, and his lifelong refusal to conform to any authority, is it actually possible to achieve that level of paradigm-shifting greatness without the self-destruction and chaos that followed him?
It's a great question.
Can you ever truly have the genius of the performance without the pain of the person?
It is the eternal question of the tortured artist, magnified to the biggest scale imaginable.
We hope you enjoyed this deep dive. It's wild to think about, isn't it? The greatest actor of his generation, looking at a cue card just off camera, mumbling his lines, and somehow making us believe every single word. See you next time.